Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in with My Hero Academia chapter 341. Recording it on a Monday. Hopefully it'll come up on a Monday. Last week had problems, but hopefully this week it'll come up on a Monday. Hey everybody. So, 341, it's the story of how we all became heroes, part -1. Pretty much signifying, okay, we're doing the other side of the spectrum. We're doing the heroes. Well, actually, the heroes of the villains. That's what we're doing. So for the spoiler video, I didn't have too many opinions about it because some of the wording wasn't damning enough. And one wonderful commenter, Kayla, pointed out that she wanted more. And thankfully, Kayla, I think we will have more for this video. Also, hope you're having a great day, Kayla. Hope everyone's having a great day. So when we come into this video, it's a villain chapter. So I'm going to end up talking a little bit about just the morals involved here. And I was looking at the comment section on Viz Media while I was on there. And yeah, no, people are again playing that game of, society is at fault, and then people say like, no, the villains are at fault. And it's always an interesting conversation to have. And I have my opinions about it. You guys know me. You guys know that I'm probably not going to break on a fundamental level because at the end of the day, the villains went and they got kids killed. There is no way you can excuse Dabi hating his father, justifying the mass murder of many people who lived in the 19 cities and more that Gigantomachia ran through. There's just no justifying that. A world built on the bodies of innocent children is ridiculous. And, when we start playing that game, when you start, throwing blame at the villains and all that kind of stuff, you get all kinds of different opinions coming out. Like, some people say, well, those kids are part of the problem, too. And then that is a disgusting idea in general. Not many people say it. But just to, point out the problems with that particular line of thought, it's just flat out. Izuku is a kid. And he is one of the good people because you see in him that he has a potential to change society for the better. Ochako as well has potential to change society for the better. What you're essentially doing when you're saying that those kids are part of the problem is that you're ultimately removing from them the ability to grow and learn and become better parts of society. You're taking away all their potential. You're stripping them of their humanity. And that's usually what ends up happening when you're trying to justify the villains, is that you have to take away a lot of other people's humanity to justify them being correct for lashing out. And with the villains in general, also, you can't just go with the blanket statement of society made them all terrible. It's a case-by-case thing for each villain, and that already you can hear why people don't do it. It's because you have to go into a case-by-case analysis for each one. But with the villains that we already have, just flat out, Overhaul, he is not affected negatively by society. He is proudly within his Yakuza thing. Everything, he doesn't need to actually abuse a child and kill her multiple times and revive her. He didn't need to do that. But he did it because he ultimately developed an ideology. And mind you, again, let's just be very careful here. Society always plays a factor, but at some point, some villains are more responsible for their actions than others. And I'm bringing that up because with this chapter in Toga, you get to see something a little bit interesting, and we will talk about it. But again, when it comes to the villains, society and their own personal choices, you can't divorce either of them from it. And I think really the best example of all of this is Twice. And I did see people talking about Twice on the Viz Media comment side. But Twice is the ultimate example of why it's not a good idea to say it's entirely society's fault. And as we go into this, I think one of the important things to keep in mind is a good chunk of people forget how stupid the villains are. Not Shizaki. Shizaki's a biochemist at this point. Shizaki's a genius, which is what makes him more dangerous. He's so intelligent. That's the problem with him. But the villains have anti-societal values. The villains are also misanthropes. They don't know how to actually relate to other people. And the villains are also, unfortunately, victims of strange compulsions that the rest of society hasn't been able to figure out. There's a lot of things going into the villains, but again, the big thing is that the villains are stupid, and they also lack moral character, which is the big issue. And you might be asking, well, how does that tie into Twice? Well, very simple. And Twice is really the blueprint by which everyone else is going to fail here when it comes to Hero Academia. See, Twice got in a bad position, right? He got fired from his job after a guy with money abused his power and all that kind of stuff to get him fired. It was a pretty nasty situation. All right, cool. Twice is out of a job. He ends up becoming a criminal overlord using himself. But, what happens in his origin story? Let's see. Chapter 115. As he says, I had my doubles do all sorts of things, and I was their king, but in the end, we weren't too happy about me being king. You know what's happening there? Right there, you see what happens when someone with horrible moral character is put in a position of power. A lack of integrity, stupidity, laziness, what ends up happening, he quite literally tries to kill himself, or he quite literally tries to hurt himself, maim himself. That's what happens. That's what happens with these villains. Society had nothing to do with the choice of Twice's own clones. That was entirely Twice's fault. That is the thing that people miss, and that is probably the best example for why the villains are, in good chunks, responsible for their own actions. Twice created a society with him as the king, and just like how it's going to happen in the proper story, if we went to that logical extreme, society rebels. Society's going to come back and hit them back even harder. For all his troubles, for his lack of moral character, for his lack of, being able to be like, all right, you guys are the same as me, we're going to work together. He got a knife in the face, and now that leads into the current Twice. But that's the fundamental thing. When these guys receive power, they're going to self-destruct because they're all fundamentally terrible people. A good chunk of them are fundamentally terrible people. A lot of times the people in power. If anything, Twice's example shows what the problem is when the worst kind of person ends up being in power. But that's the big thing here. That is the biggest example of just what happens when you are in a bad situation and you're stupid and also lack moral character. This is what happens, and that's where the majority of villains are. And especially the thing here is, some of the villains are following Shigaraki, but Shigaraki is the biggest victim in the series because he has been victimized not only by society when they shun him during a crisis moment, but also by All For One, who's been manipulating him to the point that he's turning him into some kind of blobby abomination and is trying to take over his body. And this is the guy that people are following. No. See, at the end of the day, in Hero Academia, there's going to be many people thinking like, oh my god, this is not what I wanted. There's going to be many people thinking like, oh my god, All For One, you tricked us. That's not Shigaraki. You're going to be thinking, oh my god, All For One, why are you doing this to Shigaraki? Why are you pretty much violating his mind? Why are you violating his sanctity? But what does it matter? The villains violate everyone else's sanctity. Nothing actually fundamentally different is happening when you look at the villains in terms of what they're doing, what All For One's doing to Shigaraki. What All For One does to Shigaraki is what Toga does to people she kills, or she allegedly kills. So that's ultimately like, there's a lot of different factors come into this, but the big thing that you have to take away is that the villains fundamentally are stupid. They're going to be shown to be wrong. And when you have Shigaraki and the very creepy Tenko possibly resisting within Shigaraki, like the symbol of Shigaraki's goodness, asking for Izuku to save him, potentially. When you have that there, the villains are not getting out of this all right. And also, if we were to go through and the villains have a society, which really for the villains, they need to hope they get a society. But if the villains go through and they get their ideal society, which again, doesn't make sense given that Shigaraki wants to destroy everything, but if the villains get their ideal society, what's going to happen to the kids that were victimized by the villains, the kids that lost their parents during the villains' first major attack? Well, it's pretty simple. They will eventually become the people who have been negatively affected by the society the villains created. They become the new anti-societal force, and then we just continue the stamp cycle of people in power getting brought down by the people who have been outcast by society or been done wrong by them. And believe me, those kids and maybe parents have righteous fury on their side. Those kids did not have to die. Those parents did not have to die. And, that's how this is ultimately going to go. And the reason we're talking about these long-term things is because in this chapter, there is a good chunk of lack of long-term planning. And in some spots, it's really good because like when you're the manipulator, you kind of want people to not think about the long term. You really need them to do what you want now so that you can take care of the long term. If people aren't thinking about the long term, then it's quite easy for a manipulator to come in and put their long term ahead of them. And then because of the lack of the long term, they just kind of end up going along with it. Also, in the short term, emotions are a lot more high. You can take advantage of emotions when people aren't thinking clearly, and that's exactly what's happening right now in Hero Academia. So, lots of different things going in. But you know what? This chapter also has a lot of symbolic stuff going on that you may not be aware of unless you know about specific little things about flowers. And so with that, we're going to get right into it. That was like a 10-minute general talk. We will now do the page-by-page walkthrough, and this will take a while. So, starting with the cover page, we can't ignore the cover page because there's too much things going on in it. So first off, and this is, I'm going to give props to Sarge. Sarge pointed out that Toga's design here matches Twice's design in terms of his costume. It's based on like where the white is compared to the black of the blood. So that was really neat. And Sarge, thanks for pointing that out. I would not have pointed out that there was meaning to the way that Toga was marked here. Even her head matches Twice's scheme. That's really smart. So the author clearly is going for something when he's thinking about this. He clearly had an idea, oh man, how cool would it be if I had Toga match Twice? And then you have the red spider lilies. Now listen, the spider lilies are like one of the most overrepresented flowers in anime. Everyone loves using them. A good chunk of people love using them. Iron-Blooded Orphans, Kimetsu, Hero Academia, there's many more, but those are the ones I'm going for. So the thing with the red spiral lily, if you don't know it, the red spiral lily represents the final death, final goodbye, or also the cycle of reincarnation because it appears in Buddhism. Now, the thing is, you cannot say that Horikoshi is not using flower symbolism in this. One, because it's so oversaturated in anime. His peers have done it before. He likely knows about the flower meaning. And also, he's a Japanese man in a country that has quite a significant Buddhist presence. The fact of the matter is these people know about the spider lily and they know what it represents. When you have the spider lily in like the Sanzu River or whatever, these guys know what it represents. So when you have Toga looking like Twice and you have the spider lilies in the background, this is quite literally saying the second coming of Twice. This is the cycle of reincarnation for Twice. Twice is coming back in the form of Toga. That is what the spider lilies are ultimately there to represent when interlocked with Toga. So the thing here is, like, once we're stepping into flower language, there is another layer that any scene that has those spider lilies in it takes. And props to the author for going here. This is actually very thematically appropriate, very good. This is a good cover page, very good information. Now we move on to page 2 and 3. So page 2, for a second I was like, yo, is this actually Gentle's house when I first see the first thing? But then you go down, you see like it's Toga. Also, we're doing a villain chapter. What did you guys feel? Did you guys want the villain chapter? Are you kind of done with the villains? Do you think they're too overexposed, or are you like excited for it? I know some people on the live stream were really excited to get the villains, but let me know. Another thing before, people are also asking if this is a flashback because they wanted to see the kids doing stuff. This is not a flashback. As we have been trained to read Hero Academia, when you have black borders on the page, that's a flashback. This is likely happening after. It's likely a coherent timeline that's occurred here. I had a note about what we might get next chapter. I'll just very quickly go here. I can't imagine seeing more of these setup chapters again. I really think that after these setup chapters are done, well, you know what? I think I'm 50-50 right now. After setup chapters are done, we're probably just going to go into straight fights till the end of the manga. We're probably just going to be going into like another. We might have 2 different fights going down, like one before the final battle and then like the ultimate final battle fight kind of thing, or like long sequences. If next week, or not next week, if the next chapter we come in and we have Izuku and his friends talking, and we get to see like Ochako talking to Izuku about her feelings or something like that. If that happens on the next chapter or next 2 chapters, that's it. We are going into the last fights of the series, because the Ochako-Izuku thing is probably going to be one of the last conversations that those 2 characters have. If that happens, then I'll be like 80% sure of that general idea. It's just like this thing of the setup has gone on for so long here now that it's going to be an issue. It's like it would just be too strange to do it again for another calm before the storm. Anyway, going now into this whole thing with Toga. So, when it comes down to it with the villains, it's all, society and their personal choices. Those 2 things contribute to the final result. But at the end of the day, people coming in and doing this to a house, the same way they did it to Gentle, that ain't right. Public shaming like this ain't right. Now the thing with Toga is, when exactly did all this graffiti appear? Did this graffiti appear after the war, when Toga is more known to everyone? Because when you go back and you look at Toga's introduction, the media clamped down on it according to Girin. Like, let me just get what Girin said here. back in chapter 68, the media's kept her face and name under strict lockdown, but she's a person in interest in a string of death by bloodletting. With that, it really depends on whether or not the teenagers were in, like Toga's contemporaries in school, were they enough to actually get the story out and get other people to come in and start talking about how horrible she is. I want to think that this is post-war and this is people venting, but if this was happening before the war, like right after Toga's first attack of that kid in school with her, then, you know, different situations can be justified in different ways. If this is post-war graffiti, then these people are just really upset, right? If this is pre-war graffiti, this is just, well, at the end of the day, they're shaming the family for for having a killer, but that's still incorrect because the parents, you know, the parents were the parents. This kind of stuff does not make anything better. That's for sure. Anyway, we have our thing, like, we did our best, but nothing worked. The girl's demonic. So with Toga, this is, again, the parents were not the best situation here. Ultimately, the parents kept saying something about Toga, and Toga ultimately fell for the image, or she, like, proved them right, which is unfortunate. You don't really want to prove the parents right, but you could say that the parents made a self-fulfilling prophecy for Toga. Now, the thing here, too, is that Toga is fundamentally different than other people because of that weird compulsion with blood she has. She is fundamentally different, but what this really just says is that society, and we've talked about this since La Brava, we talked about this for a long time, society just isn't good at dealing with mental deviancies because it doesn't know how to quantify it. That's probably what's going on here, which is unfortunate for Toga. Like this, one thing that you'll notice in the chapter is that the author's also trying to like make Toga a little bit more sympathetic by trying to take away like how much by trying to suggest that she doesn't have that much control over her actions, but she does. Like at the end of the day, when it comes to the villains, they're in a bad situation, but they can choose how they react to it. Anyway, page 3, you know, you get to continue seeing the house. You get to just see some of the graffiti. Doesn't really matter. Page 4, you know, you have Toga thinking about everything that her parents probably said to her. You, no one will ever accept you the way you are. You can't just live as you please all the time. Nobody can. Now that one, that one's, that is true. Just like if you are a violent person and you like beating up people, you can't just beat up people all the time. Like, you know, we can play all the different kinds of situations. Why you can't just live on your baser instincts, which is what Toga essentially does. But you can also see the frustration in the line. Nobody can live by the way they please. Like, you know, there's a lot of pessimism in there. Probably lashed out at Toga. Then you have like the one of a child saying that Toga's face is too scary. Just restrain yourself for once. So ultimately, like the idea of restraining your baser instincts, that is not bad. So what you ultimately have here is that Toga has lauded all these things in on the negative side, but there is nuance that could be had here. Unfortunately, the way that it's being portrayed, they're really trying to make Toga look like a victim. Like, how dare you say that she has to restrain herself? How dare you say that she can't express herself? It's like, no. Angry people don't have a right to express themselves on someone else's face. So Toga most certainly does not have a right to infringe on someone else's free will by killing them just to suck out their blood. If she needs to suck out their blood, heck man, very easily she could have just gone in there and just drained them to like half full or something like that. Drain them to the point that they could still be saved. This is assuming that she's actually responsible for the murders. Like Horikoshi, if he wants to redeem Toga, like one of the things he could go down doing is by saying like, yo, actually she's connected to those murders, but she actually didn't kill anyone. Not really. That was the person who taught her stuff or whatever like that. The author can come in there and do everything he can to try and save her. And as like we already know, Ochako is going to save Toga. Ochako is going to have a significant thing with Toga. Horikoshi's already said it. It's going to happen. Toga and Ochako all the way to the end. That's Ochako's final villain, unfortunately. So that's going to be an interesting conversation when we get there. But yeah, no, what you see here is Toga has put some little bits of viable things, and she's put them all in the negative side of the spectrum, likely because of the feelings that were behind it. Like, when you have to just restrain yourself for once, you can tell the intention isn't good there. That's one born out of frustration. But restraining yourself, and again, staying away from baser instincts, this is the fundamental. Like, I can't preface enough how much this is just a fundamental thing. You're not allowed to just hurt people just because you want to and just because it makes you feel good. Anyway, we go into page 5 where she walks into her old room, and this is where things start to get really interesting with Toga. And of course, I do like how people call her like vampire demon. Like I especially like the vampire part because it's like, yeah, she does suck blood. So it's cool that the Hero Academia universe, they can identify this. Now, this is going to be the interesting part here on page 5. You have Toga saying she wants to be a little birdie, chirp, chirp, tweet, tweet, so cute. Then you have she wants to be Kay, those dimples when she smiles. And then you have her biting herself while she's sleeping. Now, this is probably the biggest indication that there's a compulsion there that she can't control. I mean, like if you're biting and sucking your own blood while you're asleep. So what that suggests is just there was an issue with how much she could... Oh, sorry. I just realized that the author drew like part of Toga's boob there when the bird is dancing on her. That's very distracting. Anyway, that's suggesting that there is a compulsion there. But again, with Toga, she knows right from wrong because of all the attention her parents gave her. She knows that draining someone of their blood and killing them just because she wants that is not correct. So again, this is one of those spots where, she has a compulsion, she has a society that doesn't understand, and then she makes bad choices, like the worst combination of things. Anyway, she talks about the dancing of a red sparrow. It does a tap dance on my tummy. It's really adorable. I think the sparrow has to do with the bird that we saw her sucking the blood out of. So I don't know if there's any meaning, if there's any extra meaning assigned to the bird, but I do recall that she was sucking the blood out of a bird. Anyway, the actual really interesting one is on page 6 where it says, sooner or later it rips my tummy open and dances a jig inside of me. It stains me red all over, making me oh so cute. Such a pleasant dream, makes me so happy. So, again, Toga was born with a strange compulsion. There's no way around that. This isn't something that naturally occurs. This is likely something that comes out of that quirk or that fascination with blood. If the author wants to go down that direction. Ultimately, Toga's crazy. One thing that you have to see here, though, the spider lilies have appeared yet again. But what exactly is the meaning of the spider lilies here? Now, here's where you gotta try and figure out, like, what exactly was the author trying to say? Well, the thing here is that Toga says, it stains me red all over and it makes me oh so cute. So, she likes the idea of being stained red all over. That's a positive association that's occurring there. The spider lilies mean final goodbye when they're not meaning the reincarnation cycle. So, what that may say is that Toga's ultimate happiness is dying. Because then you can put in the final goodbye of the spider lilies. So, it's a little bit weird because you're saying, like, is Toga a death seeker? Well, she might be. She might ultimately be happiest at the moment before death. That might be something that could come out of this, but then that kind of says that Toga has to go down, like she has to die kind of thing. But the placement of the spider lilies is the most strange thing, because for this placement, the ideas of reincarnation can't really come in unless you're saying that she's going to reincarnate into a bird. But then, because of her association of it stains me red all over, making me oh so cute, because of that positive association, it makes it feel like it's more towards the final goodbye aspect of the spider lily. And again, with the makes me so happy, right? So this is this is one of those parts where you gotta try and figure out like what exactly the meaning is of the flowers being here at a moment that would really just be the death of Toga here. Anyway, Toga says that she threw it all away. We have extra little emphasis on her smile. Yeah, I believe her. I believe she threw it all away. Anyway, we go into page 7 and we get like the most wonderful man, the most burnt crispy guy in the world, Dabi, showing up. Alright, so with the Dabi page, what's interesting is that Dabi's questioning whether or not Toga's up for whatever is going to go down. Which really builds up the idea that something big is going to happen, that even Toga could be potentially shaken. And when you consider what happens with Spinner at the end, like, potentially we could be seeing a big bang here. So on page 8 we get some like little interesting rhetoric. Dabi says that they're putting an end to this rotten world, but it's like, alright Dabi, yeah, you're gonna put an end to this rotten world, you're gonna make an even more rotten world with Potato Head at the top. But okay, Dabi, like honestly, Dabi probably is gonna he wants to see his dad suffer, and then he's probably gonna be really happy dying with his dad or something stupid like that. Like Dabi's not long for the world, especially not when he's this ugly. Anyway, He does something interesting where he just, out of nowhere, after Toga points out it's too late to ask that now, he says whether they're crying or smiling, the sun's going to come out tomorrow. So what he does there is that he appeals to eventuality. Because life is going to keep going on, we might as well greet life smiling. And that particular rhetoric there, it ain't too bad. Actually, for Dabi saying it, it's pretty good. It's a mildly manipulative tactic, because what he's saying is like, yeah, you know, things are going to happen. Might as well keep doing the things that we want to do, because life is going to keep going on. Why would we not do the things that we want to do? Might as well keep doing it. What he's doing is pretty much just, he's using tomorrow coming as an excuse for why they get to behave badly. You know, 5 days from now, he's going to be saying the same thing. Oh, tomorrow's going to keep coming. Let's just keep blowing stuff up. Tomorrow's going to keep coming. Let's just keep blowing stuff up, right? It's just going to continue going on like that until eventually it burns out and the sun doesn't come up the next day. And like that would be a metaphorical thing. The thing here too is that they're putting an end to the rotten world. So metaphorically, eventually the sun will stop coming up for them. And then what are they going to do then? That's the issue here as well, is that they're running towards the end here. They're going to cause things to self-destruct, and then what's left? Well, if Shigaraki has his way, nothing. Except for what Toga likes, or like whatever it is that the villains like, whatever nebulous thing that Shigaraki has made peace with. Page 10 and 11 is super exciting, where we finally realize that, yeah, Dabi did in fact get twice his blood. So this is one of those really good spots for Dabi. On that previous note about the rhetoric about, you know, just looking at tomorrow instead of looking at the long term here. The thing with that rhetoric is that anyone that's using it to manipulate someone, that's pretty good. That's pretty smart. That's what you should be doing. If you're manipulating someone, you 100% only want them to look at tomorrow and not like 1 year down the line. Because, yeah, you don't want them to be that mindful. But when you're the follower and you're listening to it, like you're the stupid one. So props to Dabi for knowing how to control that. And the reason I'm bringing that up is just because Dabi is a manipulator. This is probably one of Dabi's best traits. Him knowing to pick up twice his blood, and then him knowing enough about Toga to know that she could use twice his blood to create more twices. That's really good. And it again shows that when it comes down to it, Dabi is good at using resources, much better than Shigaraki is. And again, the thing with Dabi here is that he has said many times that he's 100% into using the rest of the League of Villains. He will use them till the day he dies, probably. As long as he gets to Hurt Endeavor, that's all good to him. So this was a good round for Dabi, just showing off, yeah, this is his competence in particular. Again, really good resource use. Now he says the ones having the last laugh will be them. No, it's not going to be. We know that this story is a story about people having their backs against the wall. We know this is Izuku's story. Izuku's going to win. That said, Dabi's probably going to die having the last laugh. He's probably going to die in a giant blaze of fire. And again, he's probably going to be laughing. But the way this is going, we know the heroes are going to win. He's wrong. He's incredibly wrong. The author already screwed him over. We go into page 12 now. Where we are seeing this weird forested area. We see Skeptic and All For One talking, which I think the thing with those two is that they're like, Skeptic's probably been coming in and out, honestly. And we have Spinner going towards Shigaraki, where we see this grotesque abomination. I do not know what to make of this, but I am most certainly not a fan. I do not like any kind of possibility that Shigaraki becomes a giant blob monster that you have to fight. That's just not pretty. I'd rather a sleek, you know, humanoid figure for it to be the final fight. It's just because the giant monsters just aren't that interesting to see people fight, not in a manga. So I really hope we don't get a giant space flea type thing or space abomination. I say space abomination, I'm thinking about video games, but I just hope we don't get an abomination type character, or I hope that's not the final fight. I hope that you don't actually turn Shigaraki into a monster to make something interesting. Just keep it sleek, keep it with just human characters. Now, of course, when you look at this giant mass, there's a lot of hands here. But, you know, what is the point of this? Is All For One planning to grow copies of himself in there? Is he planning to give the vestiges inside of Shigaraki their bodies back? Like, what is his big idea, actually? Is he planning on eventually taking his brother's vestige, putting him inside of Shigaraki, then having Shigaraki grow a new body for his brother? Because that'd be kind of insane. But when you have this kind of growth here, it's weird. What are you trying to do, All for One? Are you trying to make Shigaraki into some kind of human farm? Like, are you trying to make bodies that won't be affected by quirk singularity? It's just a very strange visual. We have to see where this is going to go. But I can tell you, this is not a fan. I really hope this goes nowhere, actually. Like, I'm not a fan of this particular development. Not, partly because it's super gross. We go into page 14, where Spinner is in full disbelief and we get some context. According to All for One, Shigaraki is overcoming the quirk doomsday theory. So pretty much quirk singularity. He's overcoming the idea that quirks will be uncontrollable after a certain point. Or the idea that quirks develop faster than human bodies, so they'll be uncontrollable. He's overcoming that right now. Honestly, this kind of reads like word salad, because like when you substitute the quirk doomsday theory with what it actually is, he's conquering the idea that quirks are uncontrollable after a certain generation. How is being a giant blob conquering that? Like, that doesn't make sense. And why is it happening? Like, it's weird. It's a weird line. If you guys have any interpretations, let me know here. But then you have a gigantic lie. Spinner asks if he's still Shigaraki, and All for One says, why, yes, of course. Gigantic lie. All for One already knows that it's neither him nor Shigaraki. What All for One's going to be saying, like, oh, yeah, he's the Shigaraki I envisioned, or he's the Shigaraki I created. I never cared about his actual personality. It's still Shigaraki's body. Like, All for One's going to find all the different ways to weasel out of it, because All for One, again, speaks in niceties. Then you have Skeptic's big thing. Where he starts the conversation saying that, oh hey, I'm pretty sure you know the percentages of how many villains are actually mutant shapes, and I'm just thinking like, no, I don't. How many of the villains are mutant shapes? Could you tell me that? I would actually like the statistics. Give me the good statistics. Give me like a 40%. Give me a 30%. Because really, I wonder, what would happen if I was to go right now and look at all the villains in Hero Academia in terms of the main villains? Okay, cool. Like, actually, when it comes to the no-name people, yeah, lots of, more mutant shapes than normal. But then you go into your Vanguard Action Squad. Dabi, nope. Toga, nope. Twice, nope. Spinner, yes. Compress, nope. Magnet, nope. Muscular, nope. Mustard, nope. Moonfish, nope. Let's go into another little group. The Yakuza. Overhaul, nope. Chronostasis, nope. Mimic, nope. The Boss, nope. The Thugs, not really. Nemoto, nope. Rikia, I believe. That one's a giant muscular guy. Okay, I'll give a mutant shape. Those three that fought Sun Eater, nope. Rappa, nope. The guy with the barrier quirk, nope. The drunk guy, nope. Let's continue. Other known villains, that one guy that starts at the beginning of the series, he might be a mutant shape unless he has a giant quirk. The sludge villain, yeah, definitely a mutant shape, but he doesn't seem like a nice guy. Habit headgear, all right. Stain, nope. Gentle criminal, nope. La Brava, really short person. The cider house, nope. The creature rejection, okay, like not even a point of asking about them. Star servant, nope. Ending, nope. The glutton gang, nope. Lady Nagant, nope. Dictator, creepy. Hunchback, but no. So that's enough. The point of what I'm saying here is, no, I do want to know the percentage, because in story, I have no reason to believe there's actually a significant portion of criminals that are heteromorphs. I don't have any reason to believe that this is a bigger thing. I don't have a reason to believe that this is a bigger problem than just normal shaped humans. If anything, what it shows you is that the author himself has a bias towards regular shaped people. And I don't know why that would be. But this is ultimately one of the issues with the Heteromorph's discrimination plotline. Here, specifically here, because in other parts it works well enough. But in this spot, the author is telling us like, oh yeah, it's disproportional, or it's a significant portion, but in story, everyone that's mattered, or a good chunk of the villains that have mattered, have all been normal people. Heck, when we go into this idea that there are a lot of heteromorph villains, I'm just thinking like, is it more than the normal amounts? Because even in the Liberation Army, a good chunk of those guys, like, there were more regular shaped people than they were mutant shapes. So it's just an interesting thing, and this is one of those parts where actually having the numbers, and the author can make up whatever number he wants, would just do better, because this is pretty much the conflict between this would be the conflict between the impact that the readers receive and what we are told is the reality. Like, it's a very different thing, what the viewers have experienced and what the manga says is true. There's a fundamental conflict that's appearing here, but you know, what can you really do? If anything, again, the author probably is not very good at drawing mutant shapes as villains. At least not the majority of villains that matter. In some ways, actually, when you look at Spinner is like the token mutant teammate of the group, which is a little bit unfortunate. Also, since we were speaking about villains earlier, you know, Spinner is probably one of those people that society definitely, like, really badly affected. Like, if we were to look at the people, Spinner is in the unfortunate place of being badly discriminated against in his entire life, and then having such a lack of character that he just follows behind whoever is more charming than he is. And he's told us that he's pretty much just a follower, someone who's been hurt into not having his own personality, just following people who are stronger than him. Anyway, Skeptic goes on to say, like, something really blanket. No matter how hard the heroes and the government have tried to eliminate society, the light can't reach every dark corner. So I wish he wasn't speaking in metaphors, because, like, all you can really say here is, like, okay, yeah, the countryside. Yeah, we know there's, like, intolerance everywhere. Plenty of mutant shapes hold deep grudges against the so-called heroes. Okay, yeah, I mean, like, the ones that were never helped in the countryside for sure. The ones that were targeted probably. Again, you know, I kind of wish we had more information here to really buy this information. I'm really glad that we have that one instance of the girl being badly discriminated against because of what she looked like. That's a really powerful instance, but for Skeptic's purposes, we need more. On page 15, you have Horikoshi again bringing up the idea that there were people dressed up like Spinner. So we already knew about this. He confirmed it already with one of the previous chapters when All for One was doing it. So pretty much he's just reiterating this, just making sure that everyone understands that people that were dressed up like Spinner, for anyone that noticed them, that's why they were dressed up like Spinner. But again, All for One already walked us through this, and we had the exact same, like, panel used as an example of it. So, you know, just reiterating information. The bottom of that page is ultimately the whole thing about pulling the trigger. And in the spoiler video, I pointed out that one of their first plans was to attack society all at the same time. So that trigger there, when you're seeing it, I'm really hoping it's not bombs, but it's probably bombs. They're about to, like, level up into being gigantic terrorists. So one thing that would be really cool is if they planted bombs in Shiketsu and Yue, just through the refugees. If they managed to do that, that would be, again, supremely cool. Just because it's like, yeah, 100%. If you want to make a statement, yeah, blow up UA. So we'll have to see if that's actually what they go down doing. But with this whole trigger thing, I do wonder if the author is actually going to have Spinner pull it. And if Spinner pulls that trigger, God, the villains have to win, because society's not going to be happy after that. The mutant shapes also will just lose gigantic standing. You think the countryside's bad now? If the mutant shapes lose this and they get blamed for the bombing in general, or they get blamed for any kind of destruction, the countryside, the people who are hiding in the shadows in the countryside with their bigotry, they're going to come out in full force. Anytime a mutant shape asks, why are you hurting me? It's like, because you hurt the rest of society. You killed many kids or something like that. It wouldn't be that hard. If there's one thing that idiots are very good at doing, they're very good at using revenge as a motivation for why it's okay for them to do terrible things and be terrible people. This happens on both sides. Now, one of the unfortunate things here is that Spinner feels like they're past the point of no return, so it kind of feels like, you know, choice are limited. You have Spinner listening to Shigaraki say, "Bring it all down." And, like, you really shouldn't be listening to it. And Spinner effectively says, I'm not going to be doing critical thinking anymore. I'm here for your sake, Shigaraki. But the thing is, Shigaraki doesn't even know himself. A part of Shigaraki is crying out, hoping for someone to save him. So this is one of the big things with Spinner, is that in the future, he might have to come face to face with this, and he might have to ultimately say, like, I didn't help Shigaraki the way he actually needed help. But when you're giving up your critical faculties like this, what can you really expect? He is ultimately a victim that was made into a slave by people who know how to manipulate him better. On page 16, 17, you get to see the slime villain again. So the slime villain's popping back up. There's also this one guy from the Liberation Front. So cool to see him here again. There's other mutant shapes. All right. Now, it's interesting seeing this part of the city destroyed. Because if you look at Toga's page, Toga's area of town is not as destroyed with this as this city that's been toppled over. So this is one of the unfortunate things. I really, really, really would have loved if the author told us which parts of Japan were actually like bad areas to be in. It's just because, you know, you see so many different images. Some places look picturesque, other places look like this. It would have been good to know what zones are the conflict areas. Anyway, All For One ends off by saying that everyone can be somebody's hero. I fully agree with him. Everyone can be somebody's hero. But the thing is, like, when you're fighting a war, very often both sides will pick out their heroes. Like, this isn't an incredible concept. This is just pretty much people wanting to feel good about their side, or people wanting to celebrate the people that are doing a good job. Just because you're a hero to someone else doesn't mean you're a good one. So this is just All For One niceties. He's just trying to, All For One smart. He's trying to make Spinner feel like he's this big guy, and it's like, yeah, All For One, you're just saying that because you just want to take over everything after everything's said and done. You just want to have your perfect Demon King society. You're gonna make everyone into slaves. We know this. We know who you are. Like the League of Villains, ultimately, they're just walking. They're people with problems. They're stupid. They're short-sighted. And then they have the Overlord, Potato Head, who knows how things goes and has an idea about how to control people through fear, tactics, and manipulation. And when that doesn't work, just plain old good body hijacking. Yeah, the League of Villains, they're gonna end up being the biggest chumps in the series. There's no way around it. Like, especially when you have these guys just saying, like, it's a little bit too late for us to turn back now. When you have them ultimately saying that they have no more choices, and you take away choice from them, you're turning them into the biggest chumps. The more you strip things away from them, the more they're going to look like they need to be saved. So, one of the last things to talk about, of course, is if the mutant shapes become a big issue here, like, how are we going to end up making it so that the rest of the mutant shapes who weren't involved with this have an okay life? Well, maybe that's where the Choji plotline comes in. Right now, with the again, like I've been saying this for a little bit, but the villains really need to win this war, because if the heroes, like if modern society comes back, people are not going to be happy about the people that went crazy during this period. But we'll have to see. I think it's very likely that a lot of the people who got caught up in this are probably going to reflect on these things and say, like, oh man, we should never have done this. A lot of people are going to regret things, because that's how these kind of stories kind of work out. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down below. That was my video, Kayla. I hope you appreciated it. I have more than 51 minutes recorded here. I will cut that down, but anyway, Kayla, everyone else, hope you appreciate it. And until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.